All right, just waiting for this to catch up here. Okay, I think we are live. I'm going to move this screen over so I can see the chat, and then I am going to switch to webcam here. Well, hello everyone. This is my second time using OBS software, so bear with me. I'm just getting used to it. Post in the comments if you can't hear me, and I'll introduce myself while people sign in. I am John A. Reed, the host of Learn to Stargaze and author of the new Learn to Stargaze book. So this is on Amazon right now. Definitely check it out for kids of all ages. And for the fathers out there, or people getting gifts for fathers, last year I produced... Oh, David says I'm live. Hey, David. Good to know. Yeah, we produced 110 things to see with a telescope, which is probably the perfect stargazing book for dads. Okay, so I wanted to do this quick live stream. I know Father's Day is on Saturday, and you may have already gotten a present for your dad. If you do that, if you get a present for your father on Father's Day. Unfortunately, my dad isn't interested in astronomy, so I generally just get him Clive Cussler books. But anyway, there is still time, hopefully, to get last-minute gifts or accessories for your dad. And I just wanted to take this time to answer some questions in the comments, and then just talk generally about the type of telescope. If you're going to get a telescope, that would be appropriate to give as a gift for a dad. I know a telescope can be a big decision, and one that you might want to get the person you're giving the gift to involved in, because they might even want to pitch in to get a better one if that's what they want. And they may also have a telescope in mind that they're thinking of picking up. Yeah, so I guess what I wanted to do, and hopefully it'll just spawn some questions here. Uh-oh. Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen, and I've got about 10 telescopes picked out, and I'm going to go through them, and these are ones that I think would be appropriate at several different price levels to give as a gift. And I think in the comments, sorry, I'm trying to read the comments at the same time here. Getting distracted. Don't get distracted. In the comments, if you have telescopes that you think you're considering, let me know and I can talk about those. I'm pretty sure I'm familiar with most telescope designs on the market. Okay, question from the comments from David. Sorry to bring it up all the time. Are you going to have those books in French? David, yes. In fact, check it out. Right here, we've got 50 objets à voir avec un télescope. Yeah. So definitely check that out. I've been working all year to get 50 things to see with a telescope in French. I have the French version of this. It exists. It is currently with a French astronomer, and he's just finishing up the consulting so that we make sure that we've got it all right and translated perfectly. And so that's an update on the French translation of these books. Also, 50 choses à voir à la lune. Oh, my French is terrible. I haven't taken French in quite some time. That's the Spanish version. But a French version exists for that as well. I hope that answers your question. So that's the 3 main stargazing books are in French. Okay. Let me share my screen here and we can talk telescopes. Hey, George. Unfortunately, I don't have a translator here in YouTube, so I'm not quite sure what that says. Okay, so we've got chat on the screen here so you guys can see, and I've got Chrome here with some telescopes lined up. Okay, so I wanted to start with the Starsense series. I'm going to have some coffee and some water here. Bear with me. Because this series is extremely popular right now. Everyone's talking about it. There's a really good Facebook group for those that have it and want support and help. And the other really cool thing about this telescope is they finally got this Starsense system on their Dobsonians. And it was interesting because I made a video about taking this Starsense system off one of these telescopes that I bought used for $100 and putting it onto a 12-inch Dobsonian, effectively creating a push-to-go-to system for that large telescope. And if you know about the price of telescopes these days, they have gone drastically up. And a push-to-go-to system for a Dobsonian would cost well over $2,000. But effectively, I was able to build one for about $700. So that was kind of fun. That's a fun video. That's on the Learn to Stargaze YouTube channel. It's about 3 or 4 videos back. All right, first question. Yeah, so I got a new Skywatcher telescope, AC102, Star Travel 102, AZ, and ordered your book. Fantastic. You know what I really like? So the 102 telescopes, if you see 102 in the name, and you'll see here it's in 102 as well, that's because this lens is shared across a number of platforms. So Celestron, Skywatcher, Explore Scientific, it seems like they're all buying this lens because it's really popular and it's just been a really reliable platform for these telescopes. It's f6.5, which is great for wide field views. These telescopes are perfect for the Messier objects, which is basically, that's what 110 Things to See with a Telescope is all about. This helps you find all of the Messier objects, and a 4-inch telescope, so 102 is millimeters, 102 millimeters is the aperture of the telescope, is a really great aperture for seeing all these Messier objects from dark skies. And we could talk about what you can see in dark skies and city skies if the comments and questions lead us there. But yeah, so awesome that you picked up a 4-inch telescope. That's great. Yeah, I absolutely love these. I have 4 or 5 telescopes with either this mirror, which is the 660 millimeter focal length version, and then I have one of the 1000 millimeter version of the same 102 millimeter aperture. And just really, in fact, this telescope here is again same glass. So this is the Omni AZ102, and they discontinued this, I believe, to create this Starsense telescope that you're looking at right here. And a tip and trick, they've been liquidating these at Costco all year. And some people have been texting me that they found this scope right here for as little as $99 US. And the new cost of these Starsense Explorers have reached almost $500 now. So I tend to buy a lot of my telescopes used. That's why I just defaulted to B&H Photo here. But you can see here's another telescope on that same platform, which is a little bit more reasonably priced if you're on a budget. And yeah, so if you watched any of my videos, I'll go back to the full webcam here. I'm going to check something. If you watched any of my videos, I really talk about sort of the 5 things that you look for in a beginner telescope. And especially if you want to be able to see more than the moon and planets. And let me just think if I can do them off the top of my head. You want the telescope to be able to point straight up. And this eliminates a lot of the telescopes on camera tripods. So where the telescope is basically mounted about right here, and it'll run into the tripod legs. You also want it to smoothly move left and right and up and down. And that's very important. So when you point the telescope, it should stay exactly where you point it. And a lot of telescopes fail that test. A lot of the beginner telescopes you see, if you just Google telescope, yeah, they won't stay where you put them. They'll just flop around. I like 4 inches of aperture. And 4 inches of aperture is important because as you move into the Messier items, as you try to see these deep sky objects, you need that aperture to be able to resolve, especially the stars in these globular clusters, or to be able to resolve these dim globular clusters at all, to be able to see all the targets in 110 Things to See with a Telescope. So aperture allows you to, it gathers more light, and it makes stars in particular, dim stars that might be outside the range of a smaller telescope, suddenly come into view. So the larger the diameter of the telescope, the more light it collects, the dimmer stars you'll be able to see, and it also, that's the only determining factor of the resolution of the telescope, is that aperture. Yeah, so super important to to consider the aperture in the telescope. Another thing about talking to people that are getting telescopes for dads specifically, dads versus, you know, buying a telescope for kids or teenagers, like dads are enthusiasts. A lot of them don't like to dabble, and so most of the telescopes, when you just look on Amazon and type in telescope, those are really toys. They're for kids. So you want to cross that line into, you know, what you would consider, I guess, an instrument. And so these are sort of, these telescopes, this one and even this one and this one behind me, just barely cross that line into sort of a you know, a hobby instrument that you'll be able to use for, you know, your whole life, hypothetically. This telescope, really great. But anything I think below this level of quality, what you're seeing here, would probably fall into the toy category. I don't think I hit all 5 of my qualifications here. Yeah. So the other thing I really like to see on these, what makes a good beginner telescope, is the reflex sight or red dot finder versus the finder scope. I find finder scopes really challenging to use or to teach people to use. If you're looking through a finder scope and you move it across the sky often moves in the opposite direction just because of how the optics are set up. And also, it's hard when you're looking through a finder scope to tell where you are in the sky. So finder scopes have their advantages. You can typically, if you're in dark skies, you can see, if you have a proper finder scope that's got like 50 millimeters of aperture, you can see all the Messier objects in the finder scope, and then you just move to the larger telescope for a better view. That's the big advantage of the finder scope. But for finding things from the city, or if you're not as familiar with the sky, the red dot finders are definitely the way to go. Let me put this back on the screen here. Yeah, sort of talking as if you can see the screen. All right. Now, if you're thinking of gifts to give a dad who already has a telescope, if they don't have one of these, this would be sort of your #1 big upgrade. And I left the batteries on. Okay, always, yeah, and spare batteries. 2032 batteries. You gotta have just stacks of these 2032 batteries if you're buying this for someone, because I always leave it on. So this is a bullseye finder, and this makes it quite a bit easier to find things in the sky. And if you look at most stargazing books, including 110 Things to See with a Telescope, the maps on the page, I don't know if this is coming in here, it's washed out on my screen, but we include little Telrad circles. So let me go to one of the big ones. Let me go full screen here. So my monitor's off to the side. That is still washed out. Anyway, there are big rings here on the page. And what you do is you line up there's rings on the site as well, and you line them up exactly as shown on the page in the book. And that enables you to find these deep sky objects with much more ease than a finder scope, and a little bit more easy than just the dot. Okay. So, yeah, so we covered Starsense. Well, we didn't really cover what this is. So Starsense is a push-to system. So what it does is it uses your smartphone and the smartphone's camera to do what's called plate solve, and that tells the brain in the phone exactly where the telescope is pointed. And so as you move the phone, it's constantly taking pictures of the sky, looking at the stars and triangulating its position. So it always knows exactly where the telescope is pointed. The downside to Starsense, I think, is the app and the database in the app itself. I don't think the database contains more than a few hundred objects. And the objects it contains are already easy to find, so you don't necessarily need Starsense in the first place to find them. I don't think it has the NGC catalog in it. It has all the Messier items. So if you look at that video that I made where I test Starsense, we just flew through all the Messier items that were visible that season. Like you'll see me and Tiffany race, and in about 15 minutes, we had photographed and sketched all the winter Messier objects. And you can watch that in that video. And then Haley did a great job editing it together into this big adventure series. And there were coyotes in the background like howling at us, and I almost hit a deer on the way home, although I don't think that made it in the video. yeah, so that's Starsense. Some people think that this takes pictures of the sky that you actually share and takes pictures of the deep sky objects. That's not how it works. In fact, this telescope, it's really not designed for taking pictures at all. I mean, I as a gag, I put $4,000 worth of camera equipment on this and took an epic photo, but it did take $4,000 worth of camera equipment. You can use this, with your smartphone to take photos of the moon and stuff, and that's fun too. But not pictures like my background. Like, where'd it go? We on webcam here? Yeah, like this background. It can't do this very easily. Yeah. Okay, where are we? Let's switch. Again, this is my first time officially using streaming software versus just the iPhone. Okay. Wow, I really took these out of order. Yeah, so I have friends that, at least my old boss, he was a real estate developer, and he's like, I want to do astrophotography, but I just want to sit on my couch and drink wine. And the only, and he said, I don't want to have to learn anything. And so that's where, if you're, I don't know, if you got money, I guess. I've had a few people use these. This is Stellina, and I've used in Telescope, and they're really cool if you've got the money. Like, the idea is they're like the iPad of telescopes. They just work. The photos you get, they're not quality like the background of your desktop quality, but it's pretty fun to be able to just sit around and use your iPhone, and they have software so it'll project the images that it's seeing in real time out to all the other iPhones in the vicinity. It's pretty cool. So I got to use Dr. Cyan Proctor's The Inspiration for Astronaut while we were in Arizona last month, and it was pretty cool. So I mean, there's lots of videos on those. You can see them in action, but they're interesting. They don't replace astrophotography yet. Okay. So if there's one telescope that is sort of the all-around sort of best beginner telescope, it's pretty much universally accepted. That is the 8-inch Dobsonian. I've owned a couple of these, and yeah, the ability to just fly through all the targets that you want to see and go from one to the other effortlessly is pretty special. And to know that your telescope has the aperture to be able to handle them. Telescope inflation, someone just pointed out telescope price inflation is real. Yeah. So I own this one, and I paid $200 for it. I bought it used, but still, and it came with fancy eyepieces, and it came with a reflex sight, stuff like that. Yeah, so this is your classic. The disadvantage of these is that if it's sitting in the house, sometimes it's hard to motivate yourself to get out of the house and drag it down the stairs and set it up, versus a telescope on a tripod, which you just sort of put under your arm and go. Also, it's harder to fit these in the car than a tripod. It just collapses. But if people are wondering, well, does the tripod telescope or this one take up more space in your house? Because I leave my tripods extended, the footprint of the Dobsonian is actually much smaller than my tripod-based telescope. So if you're worried about which is more annoying to have around the house, the Dobsonians actually take up less space, square footage-wise, because you don't have these big legs. Hey, Anthony, just checking your comment out there. Yeah, oh gosh. Leaving these, the batteries and the tail rads on, and the quick finders and your Star Pointer Pros. Got to have those 1032s. Okay. And so, yeah, so beginner telescopes, this is another one that I recommend for people that, they say, hey, I've got a budget of $1,000. Of course, this has gone up in price. Yeah, even 5 or 6 months ago, this was below $1,000, at least for the used ones. So this is another example of just an all-around fantastic beginner scope. I mean, as a Father's Day gift, that's pricey, but if you want to go splits with your dad or your whole family or what have you, this is another one of those scopes that provides a lifetime of enjoyment. And it's also nice because it has the go-to, and it has the, 14,000 item database. So you can go through all these observing challenges, like see the Messiers, the Caldwells, the NGCs. And if you're getting into planetary astrophotography, like you can take a photo with this that is just as good as Hubble could take of like Saturn when Hubble first launched, using the stacking process that has been developed in the last decade or so. Yeah, so this whole, someone's commenting, the NexStar SE series is nice. He has the 5 SE. Yeah, so we can go down to the 6 SE here and then lower for the 5. The 5 is probably still under $1,000. And just really, I mean, the SCT design is really cool. So this is basically taking a telescope that's like 8 feet long and folding it into a telescope that's like 18 inches long. And, you know, it does this with you know, I forget if it's a parabolic mirror and a correcting plate. And so the light makes a few bounces around, a few bounces before it gets to your eye, which is they're able to compress that focal length. But yeah, the clarity of these scopes is fantastic. And usually this is a scope that people typically buy and they keep for life. I guess. I mean, you see them used online. Maybe it's people that are their estate sales or something. Yeah. The only other change you can do to this one is put it on an equatorial mount. And the other thing you can do is, if you're into astrophotography, you can get a Hyperstar, which is a device that you can use a designated astro camera, and it clips, you take out the secondary mirror and you put a camera here, and you can take images at f2, which means fast. So you're gathering data really fast onto the camera sensor. Yeah, so kind of cool. I've actually never tried Hyperstar. I need to. Our astronomy club has one. It's just a matter of taking the time to drive out to the observatory and set it up. Yeah, kind of difficult with my 3 kids these days. Okay, so here's the same scope, but on the Evolution mount, and you can see that there's quite a big price premium here for the Evolution. The difference here is that the battery is contained internally, and this can be controlled by an iPad. So again, the pictures don't show up on the iPad, but you drive it around with the stargazing software on the iPad. It also sort of folds down really well for carrying. This is a handle here. Just an all-around really, really great. Okay, someone's saying, what kind of aperture do you recommend for Bortle 7 skies? So it's a complicated question. So from Bortle 7 skies, typically if you're doing visual astronomy, Bortle 7 skies is the city, basically. So what you're generally focusing on is the moon and the planets and double stars and stuff, because the galaxies are going to be the same color as the sky in Bortle 7. So they're not going to come out. Most nebula are the same color as the sky. Nebula, a little bit easier, so you can get the Ring Nebula, you can get Orion, and probably the Trifid from the city. Some of these, though, they're not aperture dependent. And yeah, so a UHC, ultra high contrast, will help you a little bit. Cameras have really come a long way in terms of doing astrophotography from Bortle 7. So I'm effectively in Bortle 7, and I can take just epic photos from my backyard. Like, it's not worth it to me to pack up the scope and drive out to a dark sky location, because I just, you know, I've got a light pollution filter. I use an L enhance filter, and just increase your exposure times a little bit, and there's your epic photos of space. But you can't do that with the human eye. And so there's certain things, though, that aperture helps with, and there's certain things that increased aperture doesn't help with. So increased aperture is not going to make it easier for you to see galaxies in the city. Just because a galaxy is the same color as the sky in Bortle 7, it just blends right in. Globular clusters, it will help, because globular clusters are made of multiple point sources, and increased aperture draws out point sources really well. So double stars, just stars in general, you're going to see more stars with more aperture. So I use like one of these scopes from the city, which is great. In fact, I don't know, I had success with this one from the city as well. So I maybe just as a general rule, although eyepieces I feel like matter, And I need to do some more math on that, because when I put a really good eyepiece in this 4-inch scope, the views were much better than the cheap eyepieces that came with it. And so I found that upgrading the eyepiece made a bigger difference than probably increasing your aperture would. So maybe that's something to think about first. Now, what's cool about these telescopes, the Omni and then the Starsense, is that they can take 2-inch barrel eyepieces and diagonals. So that would be an expensive upgrade to get that. I'm not sure how much the diagonal costs, probably $150 or something. But going to the 2-inch eyepiece made a big, that was a big upgrade for me. Yeah, someone's repeating an ideal aperture. I mean, that's what we've been talking about. So this is 4 inches of aperture, and that's worked. It's, you know, from the city, aperture doesn't matter for stars and planets. At least the light pollution doesn't affect, sorry, planets and the moon. Aperture just, it allows you to see dimmer stars is the biggest advantage of aperture. And resolution, higher resolution. But yeah, the ideal aperture, I don't know. So ideal aperture for a travel scope or a beginner scope in general is sort of the minimum is 4. I guess the ideal for your mix of portability and are you going to use it is 8. Like your 8-inch Dobsonian here, and then your 8-inch SCT, because that's going to make it relatively easy to see all the Messier items. But again, it's not going to help you from the city. Aperture is not going to help you necessarily see galaxies from the city. You got to get outside of town. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so now I want to talk about, so we have sort of we're buying for dad here, right? So we want to get away necessarily from toys, because you might get dad a telescope like a Celestron, what are those, Power Seekers, or the ones that come up first if you Google it. And I feel like you're not getting a quality device if you just Google telescope. In fact, maybe I'll do that right now. Amazon.com. Telescope. Right? These are toys. Like if you get one of these for dad, you know, it's not going to give you that sense of I'm a hobbyist, I don't know. So there's a big jump up in quality, and I feel like the way for you know, let's say small telescopes of high quality, so a telescope that you're gonna take out and use and keep forever because it's awesome, you typically want to look for doublet in the name. And I just picked out this one randomly because here you have a really high quality doublet telescope, and it comes with the diagonal, so you're basically ready to go. You just need an eyepiece and a mount. And again, this is something you'll have for life. Doublets are typically not used for astrophotography. They're because you'd still have a bit of chromatic aberration, but as a travel scope or as a grab and go scope for just heading out to dark skies to see star clusters, just really great. So like this scope from dark skies, like Bortle, you know, 4 and under, that would be a really great way to make your way through the Messier list as well. I know it's under the 4 inches of aperture we talked about for sort of the ideal or the minimum aperture, but I think there's something to be said for the quality of the optics can make up for a little bit of that. Yeah, the best telescope is the one you use. That is sure true. You know, and there's different sizes of these. Like if you had an extra $200, you could go up to. They have an 80 millimeter, and then there's 100 millimeter as well. And then you do need a mount for this though. So let's talk about mounts for a second. I mean, you can pick up basic mounts, and these are all going to take. This is called a Vixen dovetail here. So that's pretty universal. So it'll go on one of these mounts. That's an EQ mount. I don't typically enjoy EQ mounts for visual observing. This mount though, AZGTi, and there's AZGTe, which has a few less features, although I think it has all the features you'd want. Someone's saying, aren't all refractors doublets? Yeah, I think they are, but in the good telescopes tend to put them in the name. Yeah, I do think this is a doublet, but I don't think the lower quality telescopes are advertised as such. Probably because the yeah, anyway. So I hope that answers that question. I'm sure there's the like really long telescopes that just have a single lens in them, because you don't need corrective optics if you have one of those a really high focal ratio. So yeah, and then there's triplets too. So most astrophotography scopes are labeled as triplets. And that APO, or now I forget the acronyms, apochromatic, and that just tells you what types of errors are they correcting, like chromatic aberration, where the different colors come in at different focal lengths and stuff like that. So like these telescopes for astrophotography or for bright objects, you're going to get a little halo on the bottom on top of the star, because the optics are just not of such a quality, which is usually starts around $600, that you're going to get all the wavelengths of light coming into focus at the same focal length. Okay, hopefully that answers that question. Yeah, some more mounts. I've used these mounts. This was kind of cool. I just saw someone had basically this scope on this mount when I was with the Carolina Stargazers there in Fort Mill, South Carolina, and this was really great. You know, just really small package, and for $100, pretty good. But again, I converted this mount here into an astrophotography rig. So this is of such a quality that I'm getting sub-arc second guiding when I'm doing astrophotography. So this is one you can sort of grow into and upgrade and whatnot. So you get a wedge, you get a counterweight, etc., etc. But this is neat too. So it uses your phone to drive its way around the night sky. So there's an app. Yeah, and again, this middle section here is optional, and so I'll usually just throw this in a backpack with the telescope, and then just carry this on planes, and I've taken it all over the place. Yeah. Okay. So here's an example. I think this is what Anthony has. So he's in the comments. He can tell you about how much fun he's having with this. So this is taking this telescope lens and system and sort of combining it with this mount. Just a really good combo for if you're in a dark site and just want to see a lot of these deep sky objects like the Messier. Yeah, you can hear my cat, can't you? Originally, I think I angered my cat because he was jumping on the keyboard when I was trying to set up this live stream. Now he's just making noise over there by the door. Okay. This is out of order here in my accessories, but we can talk about this. Lots of people ask me on this channel in the comments, how do I take pictures with an iPhone, or how do I photograph the moon? This is really the way to go. Yeah. The other mounts for your phone just really aren't very good. And so there's a lot of them out there for like $15. It's really hard to get the telescope or the camera pointed right down the barrel. And so, yeah, having the NeXYZ allows the phone to go toward and away from the telescope, as well as pivot with a fine degree of precision, just to line up that the lens to the eyepiece. And this is how you're able to get like just epic photos of the moon. And if you're using stacking, almost like 1995 Hubble quality images of Jupiter and Saturn. So yeah, really cool. So paired with an SCT telescope like this, yeah, you really can get some cool shots that are magazine worthy. The only tips and tricks for that are, I guess, learn the software. So PIPP and Registax if you're on a PC, Linkios if you're on a Mac. That's the stacking software. And then Dylan O'Donnell has one that he uses that's sort of for pros. I forget what it's called. But anyway, Dylan O'Donnell, that's that Australian astrophotographer channel. He has a whole bunch of tutorials on how to do this at a higher quality there. And the other thing to keep in mind is it's worth upgrading your camera app to NightCap. So that's this NightCap. Looks like you're seeing my own reflection on my phone there. Yeah, NightCap, the app. Yep. And that's what Anthony said there in the comments. He spelled it out for us. Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. All right. Let's see. What else did I have lined up? Yeah, here's another good gift for Dad. Eyepieces. This is a zoom eyepiece. These are really great for the moon and I'd say the planets. Deep sky objects, I think you're losing quality because there's so much glass in here. And you might also have some aberrations you don't like. But in terms of the moon and planets, it's super fun. Especially if you've got, how many of my books you guys all have. 50 Things to See on the Moon, which is the main reason why the book series that I wrote won the Simon Newcomb Award. It's just so good to have this this eyepiece and be able to scoot through the different levels of magnification required to see the objects on the surface of the moon. So, yeah. So someone's asking, oh, how do you say your name? Mr. Anskier from Norway, right? Yeah. Anskier. Does the Celestron phone rig work with all telescopes? So it works with eyepieces. So it works with all 1 1/4 inch eyepieces. It would probably work for a smaller one too. Let me see if I have an example. Got all sorts of gizmos. Oh, there's your NeXYZ. Yeah, so it works with the 1 1/4 eyepieces. So almost all telescopes are using those 1 1/4 eyepieces, unless you have a big scope you can do the 2-inch thing where you pull this off and you put a 2-inch diagonal. That's where the eyepieces have the big barrel. But yeah, so I mean, you can see here that it's about 1 1/4 inches across. So the eyepiece just fits in here. You make sure it's square. You tighten it up, and then you put your phone in here. You do that with like that. Yeah, 1 1/4 inch, and it works with this one too. It works with this eyepiece just fine. Nasal says greetings from the UK. How's it going? All right. What are some other? Let me go to regular webcam here. See here. All right. Yeah. Some other fun. If you live in a place that has dew, and I know when I'm stargazing from the countryside, my telescope is soaking wet after like 20 minutes. You need a dew heater system. And so this is just an AstroZap, and then you get these sort of heat pads that go around your telescope, prevents dew. So you get one for your eyepiece and then one for your primary lens. Someone's saying, what's your opinion on the Celestron 130 EQ? So that is that big blue scope, I believe. Let me scoot that up on. Yeah, so I think that one, if you look at the telescopewatch.com, they have a good review of it. And the reason it's fairly popular, yeah, that's this one, is because a lot of people carry it. And I'll throw it up here. Yeah, so Costco carries this, and yeah, and that's a reasonable price for someone's budget. So I haven't used this. It sort of fails a lot of the beginner tests. So this EQ mount, EQ mounts for beginners are challenging to use. So I guess it depends on what type of observer you are. This is a telescope that would be good if you're doing a sketching, if you like sketching or sitting with one object for a long time. That's sort of who this is for. If you like seeing a lot of objects in one night, it can be a bit of a pain because as you go from one side of the sky to the other, you actually have to loosen these two knobs here and rotate the telescope in the tube so that the eyepiece is in a comfortable position. And again, I haven't actually used this specific one, but that's just a quality of this type of telescope that makes them kind of annoying. I think it sells well because it looks fancy, and it looks like you get a lot of bang for your buck. So we have someone in here that owns one. If in the comments, Arun Kumar could go and probably explain if he likes it or if he's been able to compare it. Yeah, it does come with the red dot finder, which is all right. I can't speak to the optics. So there's a red flag to watch out for in optics. Now this one doesn't have it. I believe it doesn't. It's not what's called Burr-Jonesed. But if if you see telescopes with apertures of 114 or 127, those are the ones to avoid because they're what's called bird-jonesed. And that's where they've sort of cheated. And if we look at the telescope here, they've put, in order to double the magnification, they've put an extra lens and they've hidden it in the focusing assembly. And what it does, it doubles the magnification so the specs look better, but it vastly reduces the quality of the image that you're looking at. Also, the mount that it comes on, like, you usually have to have a toolkit with you at all times because the various nuts and bolts on it are going to fall off and get loose and stop working. And so that's the sort of watch out, you know. And so the Bird-Jones scopes are the 114 and the 127. Again, like, you'll see this 114 all over the place, and that's just because the primary mirror is made by all sorts of different, or the mirror is probably made by the same company in China, and then the different companies are buying it and putting it in their scopes. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, for this one, I mean, it's not one I would ever recommend. Telescope watch. I forget if Ed Ting runs that. Ed Ting is not a really popular YouTuber. Yeah. It's a no on the recommendation as a beginner scope. I think if you're the type of observer that wants an EQ mount to observe an object without electronics, then that would be what it would be for. And so, as similar to Carlos is saying, SLT 130, I think that's the same scope, just with optics, with a special coating. That's what the SLT is, 130. I think. Oh, this guy. Yeah, so there's some advantages to this. I don't think this one's Bird-Jones. That's advantage number one. Advantage number two is that it can take the 2-inch eyepieces, so you can get a nice honking big eyepiece on there, assuming the focusing assembly will handle it. And it's also go-to. I know Costco had this scope for $150 Canadian, so about 110 US, like 2 years ago, and people were buying them up. So there might be some used ones on the market. I assume this is quite expensive now. 765. Yeah, but I think it depends what you're paying for it. I mean, this would be a nice little run-of-the-mill scope, and it also has go-to. So, you know, I think if this were $400, I mean, it has go-to versus the Starsense. Starsense, where is it here? First one, which is push-to. Yeah, and they're about, if you can get these around the same price, then that'd be cool. One other thing to note about the Starsense 130, now that you reminded me. So here's the same telescope as the SLT 130, but on the Starsense system. I used one of these last month, and when it came out of the box, it was basically destroyed. Both mirrors, and this was Cyan Proctor's telescope too, that Celestron had gifted to her when she got back from space. And so she gave it to me to set up. But the mirrors were just flopping around. And I thought it was just the secondary, so I fixed that. And then I tried to collimate it. I couldn't figure out what was going on with the laser. And then I took this mirror off, and it wasn't even attached at all. So anyway, so there may be, I guess the point is there may be quality issues with this that you might run into. That was just my experience. A lot of people seem to like this because it is 5 inches of aperture. That gives you pretty good resolution, and you're going to see lots of objects from dark skies, and it's got Starsense. So people like it. The one that we just got was just not having it. But I got it working for her. I don't think she's used it ever since. She's got the IntelliSense. Okay, yeah, someone's asking is there a European version of the Messier certificate. And I actually looked into that just recently. And if anyone knows, shoot me a note at learntostargaze.com. Because we looked into it and we couldn't find anything. So there's the Astronomical Society of Canada, which I think if you join for like $50, that's what gives you access to the certificate programs. They let you do Explore the Universe for free, so you don't have to be a member. The Messier certificate you do. But then it has other benefits, like that $50 gets you, I have a bunch here, it gives you the Observer's Handbook, which is almost worth it. It gives you a subscription to Sky News Magazine. I'm not sure if they ship everywhere in the world. But so the subscription fee to the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada has a lot of benefits that make it worth the money, even if you're not going into any events and even if you're not going to any meetings. And you can join that to get the Messier certificate, if you so want. Yeah, and there's two versions of the Messier certificate. There's one if you use GoTo or Push2, like on the Starsense, and then there's one where you find the objects just with the maps in the book. Yeah. Anyway. So, yeah. Again, if I were to say that what are the top Father's Day gifts, again, going back to the topic of this live stream here, probably if your dad has a telescope and doesn't have the NeXYZ, that would be one. I actually got mine for about $40 not too long ago. Number two, if they have a telescope but they don't have a Zoom eyepiece, it's a good gift. Of course, you can't go wrong with 50 Things to See with a Telescope. I know I'm biased because I wrote it, but I definitely think this is my number one, or did I say 50 things? 110 things to see with a telescope. People love this book, and Amazon has discounted it to $20. I mean, that's pretty good. That's for the hardcover version that, put a lot of work in. So I think of all the items you get for your dad for Father's Day, this is the least expensive. And it shows you how to get your certificates. There's the Astronomical League. There's your RASC certificate application form there. And then what it doesn't show are the actual pages where you find it. Did I put them here? Oh, yeah, anyway. Maybe on Amazon Canada. Because my computer is washing out all these beautiful pages with the maps, because we did a custom star map for each item. We put a picture of what the item looks like, and then we have the observing form that you fill out for your certificate. Yeah, so let's see here. We've got okay. Yeah, so here's an example of what the pages look like. Just like that. Anyway, cool. Yes, someone says, oh yeah, you can join even if you aren't from Canada. Absolutely, lots of members from around the world. And Anthony says, fantastic book. Yeah, thanks, Anthony. And so Nada asks, how many telescopes do you have? Well, I gave away a bunch this year. I think I have about 20. But that includes a lot of the toy ones that I've been using as props. But I've definitely used most all of these. Even like my publisher gave me this one to fix up at one point. And then these ones, all these Zyker and whatever, these are all based on the Celestron Travelscope platform. So it's the same. Again, there's only like there's only a handful of different eyepieces or different lenses in general. Like all of these brands share the same lenses and mirrors. So you only have to use about half a dozen telescopes before you've effectively used them all. Yeah, other Father's Day gifts, eyepieces. This is something you might want to coordinate with your father if he has a telescope already. Did I bring mine? Yeah, so here's my favorite eyepiece. And this is if you have a telescope that can accept it. This is the 2-inch one. Look at how big this thing is. Whoosh. So this is a ultra wide field 20mm Meade eyepiece. And so the idea is with the ultra wide field, I think is it 80 degrees or 100? Doesn't say on here. Anyway, when you look through, its space is like 100 degrees wide in each direction. I don't know why I'm flashing. There we go. So yeah, so space, when you look in a lot of telescopes, you have most telescopes have about a 50 degree field of view, or most eyepieces rather, but these ultra wide field, you just see that much more space in the eyepiece. And again, the 2-inch diameter, I'm not sure what it is about it that makes it so much better, but it's just it's a different experience using one of these big honking eyepieces. And I've used this with the 102 millimeter refractor, and it's just magical, like completely different telescope. Although I don't think they make this particular one anymore, but again, it's probably got the same guts as some of these here for about 200 bucks. Oh, and it says, do you have the white balance set to automatic in OBS? I have no idea how to even adjust that. It's probably, I've been all sorts of different colors here today. I've been like super red and like 100% ghost white. Yeah. And he's surprised that the camera isn't adjusting to the pages when you hold the book up. Yeah. I'll figure it out. I'm new to this. It's weird because like there's software I know really well and there's software not so much. Yeah. So if you want your dad to show off, TelView, they're the best eyepieces on the market. What else can we say about eyepieces? Yeah, they generally come in 3 different sizes. You've got, I believe these are, yeah, so these are like, there's medium, and I use medium and wide angle for the most part. If I want to really zoom in on a planet, like you'll see like telescopes might come with like a 4 or a 6 millimeter eyepiece. That would offer, for most telescopes, that would probably go beyond your useful magnification, so it wouldn't be any good. Usually if I want to zoom in, I'll take a medium eyepiece and add a Barlow. And I guess that's something else you could buy your dad. It's a Barlow, a good Barlow. You know, it sort of follows that like Dylan's rule of 500, except for Barlow is probably 50 bucks. There's cheap Barlows for like 10 bucks, and they'll hardly work. But anything, you know, $50 and above is going to be really great. And again, Barlows double your magnification. Okay. Okay. Someone says, got myself Celestron XCell LX oculars. Yeah. Oh, that's these guys. Yeah, I haven't owned any of these. I probably tried them. I assume they look pretty good. They look like they could be dropped, that's for sure, and survive. Yeah, so TelView the best. I think the new player on the block is Espany, and I can't really speak to any. I don't own any, but I've heard good things. Eyepiece. Yeah, this brand. Although I can see just by looking at these, like again, these are the same. So there's ones that are identical to these that are Orion, and so they're clearly using the same supplier. There. So I guess the basic eyepiece, if you know the person you're buying for only has the eyepiece that came with the telescope, then the upgrade would be the 25 millimeter Plössl. Right there. And so I have this Orion one and I have a Meade one, and they're just the all-around go-to eyepiece, and especially like if I'm using the iPhone adapter, that's what I'll use as well. All right, how am I doing on time here? Let me go to the full webcam. Oh. How do I change this? OBS. OBS. All right. How are we doing on time? Oh, I've almost talked for an hour. All right. We got 22 people watching. 110 have signed in. That's awesome. Okay. Okay, I'll put the comments back over here, and let's get some more questions. Do you use Celestron Sky Portal app on your phone to track objects in the sky? No. just because the other applications that I use are so good. I use Stellarium, which is free, and I know Sky Portal's free, and I'm sure it's fine. Stellarium is just so darn easy. And then the other one is Sky Safari, which is paid. And I'm still learning Sky Safari. The advantage of Sky Safari is that I guess Celestron can do it too for the go-tos. But Sky Safari, can drive your telescope. And if you get really into the hobby, you can plan your sessions with it. It'll log your progress for you. And yeah. And the other thing is, a lot of the stars that you see through your telescope just aren't in the maps because there's millions and millions of stars. These, you sort of get what you pay for in terms of how many stars actually show up. So if you're looking through your finder scope and you're trying to like find some supernova or something that just occurred, or just a regular nova in our galaxy, then you need a lot more reference stars than most, and that's where you use one of these premium programs. I don't know how Sky Portal does in terms of that regard. Okay, have you ever used an artificial star AstroZap for collimation? I think AstroZap is a company. Hey Shay, how's it going? So for collimation, I just use the laser, and I found that's good enough for me. Shay is saying, what telescope would you recommend for less than $150? Binoculars. No. Yeah, so that's hard because there are no telescopes below $150 except this one at Costco, if you've got a Costco nearby and they're still liquidating it, or going used. So telescopes, if you go to Amazon like I did and just typed in telescope, go here again, telescope, these are toys. Like there's lots that are under $150. They're not going to be fun. I mean, even the Power Seeker 127 EQ, it's just not fun to use. Yeah, so, and if you're looking at a gift for Dad, you know, he's going to want something that will last him a few years and that will be fun to use. I mean, there is one, oh gosh, what's it called? The Zoomal series. They had one that was under 200. Yeah, this guy. I don't know what. I mean, that's a decoy price there, 550. This scope baseline's for 100 and 150. Yeah, this would be a great scope. It gets confused with ones with circular mirrors and Burr-Jones, which we talked about earlier. But this one's actually they're actually pretty good for the price. They're great for kids. I don't know if a dad would like a tabletop scope as much as a kid would. But yeah, and so they're Z100. I bought it for $99, I think. This one. Great views, great for deep sky objects. The magnification is really low, which is great for Messier objects. Looking at Saturn, not so much. But yeah, hope that answers your question. I have a couple of them. I'm going to review the Gemini by Explorer Scientific. I don't know where that is. Maybe Amazon's not covering it. Sort of like, oh yeah, this telescope is $100 at Best Buy. I don't know why it's $337 on Amazon. No idea. $100 at Best Buy. And it's got slow motion controls, 70 millimeters of aperture. Again, not really for a dad. I think this would be like a 10-year-old if you're really, really on a budget. That would be what this scope's for. Okay. Baader Hyperion Zoom compared to TelView. Yeah, so I work at the Burke-Gaffney Observatory. We only use TelView. And so in terms of super premium eyepieces, that's all I have to compare it against. So let me see, Baader Hyperion. Have I used that? Yeah, I haven't used those. I'm sure they look fine. I mean, in astronomy, like after a certain point, you really do get what you pay for. Like, if an eyepiece is $500, it's probably pretty good. But for me personally, like even this big honking thing here, like I only paid 120 for it. I also shop used a lot. Okay, tips on finding galaxies. Yeah, I can go on about galaxies. Okay, let me just turn this off. Tips on finding galaxies. Yeah, so galaxies are the same color as a light polluted sky. So your ability to see galaxies is almost entirely dependent on your light pollution level. Telescopes don't like, so I have access to $1 million telescope. Well, if you include the cost of the dome at St. Mary's University. It cannot see galaxies from Bortle 7 sky very easily, especially this time of the year. So you got to get to dark skies. Also, you have to understand what the definition of night is. So if you're here in the northern hemisphere, I'm at 44 degrees north latitude. Night does not start until after midnight, and morning begins at before 3 in the morning, like 2 something. Like we only have 3 hours of actual night, and that's what you need to see galaxies, because otherwise the sun just isn't that far below your horizon. Like if you were up in the Arctic Circle right now, the sun would never set. It would do this big, ovally thing above your head and be above the horizon in the north, whatever. And so as we go, a little bit south of the Arctic Circle, the sun's still not that far below the horizon, so it's illuminating your sky till way late into the night. And so that's the thing, is just you can get an app like Astrospheric, and it'll show you how many degrees the sun is below the horizon. Like that sun's got to be, I think, at least more than 20 or 30 degrees below the horizon to get that pitch black skies where the galaxy itself isn't the same color as the sky. Now, that said, M81 and M82 are fairly easy. I've generally been able to find them whenever I look. Yeah, so I'm just staring at the comment as I think about it. Yeah, I mean, you also need to be very moon aware for galaxies, so if there's anything past a first quarter moon, that's going to illuminate the sky and hide the galaxy. And again, you really want to get out of town to be able to see them easily. So, I don't know, my first time seeing a galaxy for like real, and I say for real, as opposed to like a smudge. So I used to do all my stargazing from like Mount Diablo and just around California, and the light pollution was typically fairly bad. And then I went to Yosemite and saw a galaxy for the first time where you actually like saw all the spiral arms and the large star clusters within the galaxy, and just like, it's like, what? That's what they look like? They're not always tiny smudges? And yeah, so dark skies is your biggest thing. And again, galaxies, because they're extended objects, aperture is less helpful than you would think. And some people claim it's not necessarily helpful at all for galaxies. So like a galaxy is equally as bright in binoculars as a giant scope, according to some people. There's some other factors that play where bigger aperture scopes enable better views of galaxies. I mean, you're zooming in, which is better. Zooming in also helps with contrast, whatever. But like I said, like our $1 million telescope at St. Mary's University can hardly see galaxies at this time of year at all, even on a moonless night. 2 reasons: light pollution, and because we're using it when the sun is, only 18 degrees below the horizon and not more than 25. And so, yeah. Anthony's saying, is that Deadpool behind me? It is, as I smack into my telescope. Let's see if I can see my screen here. Yeah, so this is the Pelican Nebula, and someone on Starry Nights called it Deadpool because sorry, I'm looking at a mirror image of myself here. Here's his eyes, that's his mask, and then here's his arm sticking up. There's that picture of Deadpool, or Ryan Reynolds, where he's lying on his side with a gun and just like hanging out. And then so down there would be his feet. So yeah, we renamed it the Deadpool Galaxy. Okay. Let me check some stuff. I should probably log off here in a minute and go help my wife with with the baby. I can hear them outside. But anyway, let's see. Yeah, I mean, again, I think we've covered most of it. I'll hang out for another 5 minutes here and answer some questions. Oh, but for those that are on here, how many people we get on here? 20 people. We just released our new book, Learn to Stargaze for Kids. I think this is the best book I've ever written. Absolutely beautiful illustrations, and we had the artist completely redraw all the constellations. And what I really need from my viewers here are reviews of this book, preferably 5-star ones, because on Amazon 4 stars is kind of a bad review. But I guarantee you'll love this. And so this is a no telescopes required book. Wow, this is green on the screen. It looks red. Probably because I'm in front of the background. What if I do this? Green again, sort of. Yeah, green screen and green image. Anyway, so this is available on Amazon. Working on hardcover distribution now with Formac Publishing. Right now it's just in softcover. But just absolutely beautiful. Again, no telescopes required. We did telescopes optional because the deep sky objects that are in this book are technically visible without a telescope in like Bortle 3 and below skies. And so, and I don't know if a lot of people know that. Like if you're in a Bortle 1 sky and you look up, like you can see M13, you can see globular clusters as tiny little smudges. And so I put little binocular symbols beside them because if you're in Bortle 4 skies or Bortle 5 skies, that's when you break out the telescope or the binoculars and see them. But everything in this book, if you're just going camping or something, can be seen without a telescope. Yeah. Another person's saying 110 things to see with a telescope is so awesome. Yes, thank you so much for the feedback. It's interesting because I first did, when I first got into book writing, I wrote a book for me, which was 50 things to see with a telescope, and it was a black and white one. It's still available on Amazon for $10. So I wrote this book for me so that I could help find stuff, and like everyone, it just started selling like crazy, and I was like, what is going on? And then and it was like when I first published it, it was just a Word document of all the things that I wanted to it was like 10 targets per season. And when I was helping kids, I would just bring the book and then I'd be like, oh, well, there's my list of targets. And then we eventually, over the next couple seasons, turned it into like a professional book. But what's fascinating is it's sold so well, and it doesn't sell as much anymore, but it originally sold so well that people started copying it. So I'm guessing there's probably 10 knockoffs of it out there on the internet, like 50 things to see in the sky, 100 things to see in the sky. There's ones in different countries as well. Like, it's funny because I pitched this to someone in France, and I'm like, hey, I'm doing a French version. Can you help me? Whatever. And they're like, no, that book already exists. Look, it's this French version of 100, and it was called 110 Things to See with a Telescope in French. And I was like, seriously, I'm like, that is just a copy of a previous version of this book, effectively, which I thought was pretty funny. Anyway, yeah. So, but yeah, anyway. So definitely, I could, if anyone's here and has kids, or kids that they need to buy for birthday presents, no telescope required unless you want to. And I need some 5-star reviews. We've only got one review so far on that book. But anyway. Yes, more feedback. Stuart, I gave my granddaughter your 110 things to see in hardcover, and she was so impressed. Yeah, this book, I put my heart and soul into this book, and I tried to just, what is the perfect beginner stargazing book for people that already know how to use a telescope and are beyond the moon and planets. And it was neat because like we sent it to Tim Russ from Star Trek because he's an astronomer, and he had just done a keynote speech for the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, and I saw it. I'm like, oh my gosh! And then Chris as well. He's like, yes, Tim Russ you need to reach out to him, and we sent him the book, and he was like, And he was super excited. So I hope he starts using this at the Griffith Observatory there. Because it is just, because it's organized by season too, it's like, boom, here's the 25 targets we're going to look at tonight. No questions. Like, anyway. Yeah, so thanks for the feedback, Stuart. That was really, put my heart and soul into that one. I'm glad that people are finding it useful. Okay. All right. Another 30 seconds for questions. I see some people dropping off here. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for signing on and watching this live stream for the whole time there. I know some people have been here since the beginning. If you have any more questions, just comment on this video below after I hit done here. It'll show up, and then I guess that'll activate the regular comments. All of these comments disappear. Boy, not. I'll take. We got another question sneaking in here. I got time. Bresser, yeah. Let's talk about Bresser. Let me copy that telescope. So Bresser is the, I don't even know if I'm saying that right. I assume I am. That is a European, the European style. Ah, yeah. Let me share my screen here. So this looks like uses the same setup as, sure, except cookies. Okay. Well, I don't know. This looks like a discount version of the 130 with a slightly bigger mirror. I don't think this telescope would be very enjoyable, just because the EQ mounts are a pain, and then you got to keep rotating the tube so you loosen this knob and this knob, and then you rotate the tube. Yeah, there's lots. This is actually a really great website. I feel like half the people on here that have been commenting are from Europe. Really great website for telescopes, as long as you know which one you want beforehand. So I think like they've got some great Dobsonians here. Wow, out of stock across the board in a lot of these cases. Yeah, let's see what their prices are. Okay, I mean, not super horrible. Need a finder scope and a better eyepiece, but yeah. Yeah, so if you're in Europe, this seems like the place to buy scopes. This is, if I get questions from people in Europe, I'm usually sending them here. Let's see if they have anything 102. Yeah, they buy the 102. They've got lots of these. Yeah, definitely have recommended like this guy before. That's a great deal there. Where'd that go? 102. Okay. Yeah, and this is on the Twilight mount. It's interesting they're adding $100 for this mount. That's kind of sucky. But this is pretty good. The mount, it doesn't have slow motion controls, but the telescope is bulky enough that it doesn't really matter. You sort of just hold the telescope and push it around. Yeah. How do I get out of this menu? 102. 102. Okay. Yeah, and oh yeah, and they've got the, I wonder if I do link a new tab. There we go. That's amazing. I mean, if you like the motorized mount, yeah, that's kind of cool. That looks like a solid mount that'd keep you entertained for a while. Anyway, yeah, Bresser, great site. The 102, love it. All right, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining my stream. Thanks for being patient with me. I know I'm new to this OBS stuff, and I'm always looking at weird places to try and figure out what I want to click on, but I'll get better at this. Anyway, thanks everyone, and I hope you have a happy Father's Day, and get out there and stargaze. All right, put the logo up here, and that's it. Thanks so much.